Hi, I'm Simon. I help happier staff deliver better things sooner. You can find me at curiouscoffee.club. But most of all, thank you for having me. I might stand more over here because the light goes in my eyes. So I'm going to talk very quickly for two reasons. Firstly, I need the toilet. And secondly, there's a lot that I'd like to share with you today. The reason that the cracking cholera's code is so important to me is in Victorian England, hundreds of thousands of people died from cholera, and people are still afflicted by it today. And so there's a few things that we can learn, not just from how we overcame cholera, but from one gentleman called John Snow, who cracked cholera's code. There's only really three things I want to cover. The one is beliefs and how they let us down. So I want to take you back to Victorian England. I want to show how a belief let us down and made things very difficult. I want to talk about what we can do about it. And finally, the role of technology in any solution. I want to bring us back to where we are today and talk about how technology fits into the picture. All the good ideas in this presentation, I'm going to go over here actually as an experiment. All the good ideas in this presentation come from other people. My mentor, Noah, my father, other people. All the bad ideas are mine and mine alone. There are going to be a few minor deviations away from history in all honesty. And I'm going to ask you questions as I go along. That's not to test you, it's to test me to make sure I'm conveying the material in a way that makes sense. So let's go back to Victorian London. So if we imagine we're in 1854, 100,000 people have died so far from cholera. We're at the third outbreak. It's been 22 years since the first outbreak, and things are much the same. Cholera, the prevalent theory is that cholera is spread through inhaling bad smells. This is the miasma theory. And therefore, London's many cesspools are suspected. They're smelly. And this is before the time of the London sewers. So all we have, if you look around, is lots of standalone cesspools that are emptied on a nightly basis by these poor nightmen. And they sell what they get as fertilizer, which is great. So I want to put you into the picture. So imagine you're in Soho, cholera is exploding. You're the budget holder for the vestry or the region. And local officials present you with three options. And remember, all these three options are focusing on the idea that we need to remove the source of bad smells, because if you inhale bad smells, you'll catch cholera. So the three options that are put on the table, and this was true, was close smelly businesses, empty cesspools into the Thames, knock down buildings to improve airflow. Again, all focused on removing the source of bad smells because that's how you get cholera. Which one would you choose? There's no wrong answer. The third one. So we got one vote for knock down buildings to improve airflow. Any others? Okay, cool. Let's go with this one. Only because, not because I disagree with this one, because they did this one, and I can walk you through what happened. So this is one they tried. I'm going to walk you through, using a cause and effect diagram, what happened through their eyes at the time. I'm going to use a current reality tree just because it's dead simple. I'm very simple-minded. So the way to read this is an arrow is an if-then clause. So if the lamp is not plugged in, the lamp will not turn on, if-then. And a circle is an and clause. If it is raining and if I'm outside, then I will get wet. But I'll narrate you through it. So if you're walking around London in 1854, what you'd notice is these three things in particular. Firstly, cesspools are overflowing. Secondly, bad smelling sewage is exposed. And thirdly, outbreaks are sudden and widespread. And if you just stare at these for long enough, you can start to see a cause and effect relationship. Surely if cesspools are overflowing, that's why we have bad smelling sewage exposed on the streets, right? There's something else that was interesting. Over the previous years, London's population had exploded. And because they continued to rely on cesspools, that's why cesspools were overflowing. They just weren't, nightmen couldn't work quick enough. Also, the prevalent theory, cholera spreads via bad smells. If that was true, and there was bad smelling sewage everywhere on the streets, that's why they chose to empty cesspools into the Thames, get rid of the source of bad smell. Also, if cholera spreads via bad smells and bad smells only, by default, all water is safe to drink. Also, Thames is the cheapest source of water. So what happens? Water companies source water from the Thames. Also, if all water is safe to drink, water companies don't need to filter the water, and they don't. These three things together scare me. Cesspools emptied into the Thames, water companies source water from the Thames and they don't filter it. And it wasn't put any better than Arthur Hill Hassel, who said, a portion of the inhabitants of the metropolis are made to consume a portion of their own excrement and pay for the privilege. That's what was happening. So what do you think happened next? I'm hearing whispers. My hearing is terrible. It got worse. Oh, okay. I'll take that one. Exactly. So theoretically, right? If this belief was true, if cholera spreads via bad smells, what should happen is this doesn't matter and everything should be fine, right? That's what the expectation was. But expectation deviated from reality, and what happened was water companies spread infected material in drinking water. That led to the other observation that outbreaks are sudden and widespread, which meant there was pressure for the government to act. And the pressure for the government to act, given what they believed that cholera spreads via bad smell, meant things got worse. They did more of what they should not have done, as you said, which was they emptied cesspools into the Thames even more. Downward spiral. So why didn't things go as they expected? Why did things get worse when they didn't expect it to get worse? They didn't challenge their assumption. I like that. Yeah. So Deming says theory leads to prediction. Their prediction was wrong. Their expectation was different from reality because their understanding, the belief in miasma theory was incorrect. That thing. So belief drives behaviors. Is what I fear. Everything they did, everything they thought would happen, didn't happen because their theory was wrong. So the belief here was that cholera spreads via bad smells, the miasma theory, and as a result, the behaviors they exhibited, the actions they took, were cesspools were emptied into the Thames, upstream, and water companies were sourcing downstream unfiltered water. It was a belief that led to those behaviors. And what nags me is that because belief drives behaviors, it took over 20 years for London to change how it prevented cholera because they were anchored on the miasma belief. So what happens if you try to change behaviors directly? What happens if you tell your kid, no, don't do that? What's the very next thing they do? Yeah, they do that, right? That's what I did. And Alfie Kohn puts it really well. He says, what rewards and punishment do is produce temporary compliance, they bias obedience, temporary being the key word. You can't change behaviors directly. You have to change the beliefs. That's exactly what the problem was in London. You have to start here. You have to change this before the way that things are done will change. So recap, cause and effect thinking can help us find the belief that underpinned previous attempts to improve a situation, the miasma theory. Inhaling cholera will make people ill. Understand what we need to do differently next time. Don't empty cesspools into the Thames. And beliefs must change before behaviors will change. That's why it took 20 years. Beliefs in London took 20 years to change, and that's why cholera ran rampant. So I want to put this question at the back of your head for later. How would you prove the miasma theory is wrong if you're conversing with scientists at the time? I need something methodical, okay? Whilst you think about that, I want to tell you about my friend Sheila, my good friend Sheila. So Sheila had 3 symptoms. This was about a year ago. She was feeling tired, she had dry eyes, and she was forgetful. So she thought that she was using her computer too much. Fair enough. So she thought, let's use my computer less. How can we tell if Sheila's belief is correct? How can we tell whether her belief that using the computer too much is making her unwell? How can we tell if she's correct? Measure it? Possibly? Tell me more. Yeah. Absolutely, I like that. Trial, absolutely. Any other takers? No. I think we could do it with pen and paper. So don't disregard trial. I like that. That works too for me. So I believe we can use a pen and paper. We can use the same cause and effect understanding. Surely what would happen is we should be able to answer, how does this lead to that? How does Sheila using the computers too much lead to these symptoms? Similar to the cause and effect we did before, right? We should be able to do this on a piece of paper. So Sheila tried this, right? So Sheila uses the computer too much, and she believed that by blinking less, when she used the computer less, she blinked less. And that explained why she thought she'd get dry eyes. But what she couldn't explain was, why was she feeling forgetful? There was a missing because. Sheila uses the computer too much. If Sheila uses the computer too much, she will feel forgetful because, and she just didn't have an answer. And she also didn't have another answer here. She didn't have a because. If Sheila uses the computer too much, she'll feel tired because, and Sheila drew a blank. And Lisa Scheinkopf puts this really well. She says, people hurt and organizations do not improve due to our carelessness in the use of the word because. There were 2 missing becauses. Sheila's belief was invalid. So she was thinking of using computers less. Well, what's the value in that? Maybe her eyes will be less dry for a little while because she'll blink more, but that's about it. And Akov says, we fail more often because we solve the wrong problem than because we get the wrong solution to the right problem. Sheila had the right solution, but she had the right solution to the wrong problem. If her problems, all symptoms had been caused by her using the computer too much, using the computers less is the right solution. But the thing is that that wasn't the cause. So she went to a doctor. The doctor said, well, I think you have an underactive thyroid, Sheila, which would reduce your thyroxine, slow your metabolism. It will lead to these three things. I can't even pronounce them. And those three things will cause those symptoms to come about, all three symptoms. And so the doctor was able to say why his belief would lead to all the observations, all the symptoms. And he therefore said, if you just take this pill, take the thyroxine, it'll balance your metabolism and everything else, including your symptoms, would dissolve. Not literally, I hope. So the recap here is, valid belief should explain all symptoms or observations. Like the doctor could explain all symptoms with his underlying belief, but Sheila could not with her idea of using the computer too much was making her unwell. And an invalid belief is likely to mobilize unhelpful behavior. Sheila abstaining from using the computer probably caused her more distress than help. It could be. It could well be. You're absolutely right. Generally, things get simpler the more you ask why. So often it's not, but you're absolutely right. There could be comorbidities. There could be several things there. Don't disagree. But more likely than not. But then we need to make sure we have, it might be two beliefs. You're absolutely right. So yeah, don't disagree. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to jump back to Victorian time. So I'll ask you this question. How could we prove that the miasma theory is incorrect? Does anyone have any ideas? Well, the miasma theory, if it's correct, if the belief is correct, it should explain all observations or symptoms. And John Snow observed some interesting things, some terribly interesting things about the third outbreak of cholera in Soho. So he created a map as the deaths were occurring, as he was investigating them, and he noticed that most of them were clustered and occurred within a short time, within hours of each other. So this is the deaths. He also noticed that there was a death in Hampstead and a death in Islington, far away. And so he also noticed that some people were affected far from the main outbreak area. And the third thing he noticed was there was this Poland Street workhouse where there was 5 deaths for about 35 people. And there was this brewery dead in the middle that had no deaths. And so his third observation was some people, even in outbreak areas, were unaffected. So the question is, can the prevalent belief of the time, can the miasma theory explain those three things? If it can, well, it's valid. It may not be right, but it's valid. So let's try. So if cholera is spread via bad smell, and bad smells affect large areas, then that would explain why outbreaks are sudden and widespread. Everyone in Soho inhaled a bad smell around the same time, and they caught cholera, right? It's plausible. And that's what led to the actions: empty cesspools into the Thames, knock down buildings, close smelly businesses, like slaughterhouses. But there were two missing becauses. It could not explain why some people were affected far from the outbreak in Islington and Hampstead. It could not explain why some people in outbreak areas like Poland Street Workhouse were unaffected. It could not explain that. So John Snow had another theory. He believed that cholera was communicated by the evacuation to the alimentary canal. That sounds scary. But what he meant was cholera spreads by ingesting infected material. And the way he tested this theory systematically was he, again, used cause and effect. Can I explain all the observations? So he believed if cholera spreads by ingesting infected material and water companies are spreading infected material in drinking water, that would explain why outbreaks are sudden and widespread, because we're pumping infected material directly to people. Secondly, if water can be transported and cholera spreads by ingesting infected material, such as water or food, that's why some people are affected far from the outbreak. So an auntie got her niece to bring her some water from Soho because it tasted better. All the way up to Hampstead, they drank the water and they died in their respective homes in Islington and Hampstead. And if cholera spreads by ingesting infected material and some buildings have their own water sources, that's why some people in outbreak areas are unaffected. So the Poland Street Workhouse had its own well, and at the brewery, they mainly just drank alcohol. So they were fine. So what solution, in comparison to knocking down buildings, in comparison to emptying cesspools into the Thames, do you think John Snow recommended? Given his new belief. Boil your water. No buildings had to come down, no business had to close. No cesspools needed to be emptied. Just boil your water. Very simple. So valid beliefs, again, should explain all symptoms observations, as Jon Snow was able to. And an invalid belief is likely to mobilize unhelpful behavior, knocking down buildings, emptying cesspools into the Thames. That's a lot of effort when you can just boil your water. So let's come back to present day and put you in a situation. So you are a principal technology consultant. One of your clients would like you to build an internal travel booking website. This is to replace a manual process, making it easier for staff to submit travel requests to a central admin team who then approve and book it. Your client believes it will solve 3 problems. Firstly, staff are spending ages submitting travel requests. Secondly, the central admin team is spending ages reviewing those requests. And thirdly, costs across the business are increasing. Would you take on the project, given what little I've told you so far? It's paid well. Yeah, I probably would too. Let's play it out. Let's play it out with cause and effect, right? So these are the observations I just mentioned. These are the problems they wanted to solve. There were 2 more. Staff were unhappy and tired, and staff were quitting. So the interesting thing here was that travel in the business was a significant cost. They were a consultancy. And if costs were increasing and travel was a significant element of it, it meant that leaders were focusing on how can we reduce traveler costs, because that will require the travel costs, because that will increase our margins. Historically, staff had wasted some money. Just a few staff, but they had. And that meant in general, leaders didn't trust staff. And those 2 things together, that staff weren't trusted and leaders were focusing on reducing travel costs, meant going forward, all travel requests needed to be approved. Let's not waste a penny. If all travel requests needed to be approved and it takes time to review them, then what they did was they founded a central admin team to review those requests. We have to pay their salary, so that means there's more costs involved. Also, if a central admin team is formed and they don't have the context of the request, they don't know the people making the request, they don't know why they're traveling, all they could do when they review those requests is focus on, bless you, costs alone. And if they can only review requests based on cost alone, it means that many requests were being rejected just at face value because of the number on it. And also, if requests are reviewed on cost alone and cheap hotels are out of town, what's going to happen? Staff are going to be encouraged to stay outside of town and spend a lot of time in transit between their hotel and the venue. And if requests are viewed in cost alone and cheap flights are inconvenient, staff are going to be encouraged to travel at inconvenient hours. And both these things make staff unhappy and less productive. Unhappy and tired, sorry. And if unhappy staff and tired staff are less productive, they may make mistakes. And this is the time when they need to be the most productive. They've gone somewhere far away to be with their colleagues for a workshop to make good decisions, and now they're tired and unhappy. They're going to make mistakes, and costs are going to increase indirectly, but they will. Also, staff are unhappy and tired. At some point, some may quit. Replacing staff is a cost, and again, costs increase. So, what 1 box on this diagram would you change to help this horrible story play out differently? If you could just change 1 part of this, what would it be? Which 1 box? Cast your vote.
Trust the staff, I guess.
Trust the staff? I like it. Any other takers? I like it. Any others? Yes? The central admin team. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I've got 1 vote here. Oh, sorry, this one. I've got 1 vote here. I've got 1 vote here. Any others? All travel must be approved. I like it. So we've got 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. Any others? No? Okay, cool. I like it. So I like all these are correct. But I'm curious about this one because this is leading to this, which is leading to this, right? Staff are trusted. So I'm curious what happens if we trust staff. And Reed Hastings says, at Netflix, you don't have to complete a purchase order and wait for approval to buy something. You just do it. It's not that costs are forgotten. They're not tracked. They're written down and they can be spot checked. But we let staff do what, we trust them by default. And some people will cheat, but the gains outweigh the losses. Don't put everyone in prison just for the actions of a few. So let's play this out. So if staff are trusted, well, that means we don't need to approve travel requests anymore, right? And if we don't need to approve travel requests, we don't need a central admin team. So it directly connects with your 2 ideas here. So thank you. And if we don't need a central admin team because we don't need to approve travel requests because we trust staff, then all of this stuff disappears. This is all side effects and additional cost that is caused by the fact that we have a central admin team. And we don't need to pay their salary either. So costs reduce. We just got rid of loads of side effects that are not very nice. And if costs are reducing, it's another reason not to focus on travel costs. And if we don't need to focus on travel costs, it's another reason why we don't need to approve travel requests. And so we've got a virtuous cycle now. There's no need to focus on travel costs, so there's no need to focus on travel costs. So what benefit would have, if we go back to the original question I asked you as a principal technology consultant, what benefit would have creating a travel booking system have offered, noting that these were the three original problems that came up? I don't think very much. There was nothing worse than doing the wrong thing well. Marginal gains, maybe. More than anything, you've just made things harder to change, right? And that's the key thing here. Technology solidifies processes. In this case, the technology we were considering was an internal travel booking website for staff. And that was to reinforce the existing process of a centralized approval process. And that was there to reinforce the existing behavior that all travel costs must be approved. And the reason that behavior existed was because of the belief staff cannot be trusted. Bang on the money. Thank you. The great thing about going up this pyramid is that we get efficiency. We can do more, quicker, less mistakes. But the cost of going up this pyramid is things get harder to change. Once you've laid the technology down, it's harder to change it. You can change a paper process in a day. It takes years to change a technical software-driven process. And so before we lay down the concrete, before we lay down technology, we need to check, is the belief that all of this is supporting correct? And we need to start there. And my dad says, managers can't see, not because they don't want to, but because they're unquestionably following the rules without asking why. And why is what got us down here. So recap, technology solidifies processes. And if processes are based on incorrect beliefs, technology will only help us do the wrong thing better and make it harder to do the right thing later on. There's some other beliefs that I've been guilty of and bled for it, rightly so. But so what it is? An invalid belief is likely to mobilize unhelpful behaviors, emptying cesspools into the Thames, knocking down buildings, forming a central admin team. Cause and effect thinking can help us find and upgrade those incorrect beliefs. Technology solidifies processes and may mean we do the wrong thing better. And therefore transformation begins with transforming our beliefs. If I was to summarize this whole talk in another quote, the last one I promised, the principal obstruction to an organization getting to where its managers most want it to be lies in the minds of its managers and our beliefs. Don't trust staff, for example. Now what these books influence this talk greatly. Sandra's book is amazing, and all these books are amazing. So thank you to those authors. You can find me here as a little book if you want to read about how organizations accidentally get in their own way. But thank you so much for having me, for listening.
Does somebody have any questions? Not really. So
Perfect.
It's one question.
Yeah, but sometimes what I see in the organization is that at the end we are going and doing those projects because they're helpful for promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so although instead of attacking the belief that we have, we find a solution and it is helping people. So they're just pushing that way.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I guess there's two things there that come up for me because that's just such a key observation. One is that the beliefs that count for the most in an organization are the beliefs of the leaders. Right. So, and that's hard that forms the system in which we operate. So I completely agree. It's hard. You can't really change that. That's where the processes come from. That's where the technology comes from. And the other thing is, I can't remember. But yeah, just a really, really key point. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hard to challenge those beliefs.
Thank you. That was a really interesting talk. So if the beliefs are the underlying things that are driving the decisions that are being made upwards, I know you said it's hard to change the belief sets or the mindset of leadership, but what do you have any ideas then how you can impact this? Because if we've identified that as a really core part of actually progressing with technology in a meaningful way, to just say then that it's hard doesn't lead us any closer to where we need to be. So what do we do then to bring this up the chain in order to affect everything else?
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's a very fair question. So there's two things, right? The other thing that was coming up for me was that often these things are hard to see because the impact of actions in organizations that are big in particular and complex, it take a long time to play out and occur over a large area of the organization into other, like I might do something bad as a developer and only operations pay for it and I'll get my promotion, but operations suffer, right? So that makes it harder. So for me, it's about surfacing the beliefs, and the best way of surfacing the beliefs is mapping them, perhaps. What I hope things like cause and effect thinking can do, as well as other tools from the theory of constraints, and many other tools, it's just those are the ones I'm familiar with, is it can get us and other people who have power to see the problem the same way. So it becomes less me versus them versus me, and us versus the problem. We can ask, what is the impact of that decision over there? What did it mean for the different areas of the organization? Is that what we expected, or is that different? And where is that coming from? Because we need to move away from treating symptoms to treat the underlying cause, which generally is a belief. I don't know if that helped. Keep me honest, please.
No, it does.
So thank you. Yeah, we need to make it explicit at the very least, and that can give us an opportunity to explain
Okay, thank you.
using logic.